Coming up on this Monday edition of Daybreak, as North Korea raises the aggressive rhetoric following a UN resolution on its human rights issue, South Korea warns the North against making threats and calls on Pyongyang to take the resolution seriously. Women are expected to outnumber men in Korea for the first time next year. The number of elderly will also surpass the number of children under 14 in just 3 years' time. Plus, Israeli troops shoot dead a Palestinian farmer near the Gaza border in the first deadly shooting since an August truce ended a 50-day war. Daybreak begins now. Hello and thanks for joining us. To our viewers around the world, it's 6 a.m. on Monday, November 24th here in Seoul. I'm Mark Broome and you're tuned in to Daybreak. Our top story this morning: South Korea says North Korea should take last week's UN resolution condemning its human rights violations very seriously, saying there will be consequences for Pyongyang if it carries out its latest series of threats. Our Ji Myung-gil starts us off.
South Korea has condemned North Korea for threatening to retaliate against a recent UN resolution on the North's human rights violations, saying that the international community will respond firmly to any provocations from Pyongyang. Seoul's foreign ministry said in a statement on Sunday that Pyongyang should take the UN resolution seriously. In response to the North's threat to conduct another nuclear test, South Korea said that in doing so, Pyongyang would only increase its isolation from the international community. Seoul's comments follow a statement from the North National Defense Commission released earlier Sunday via the Korean News Central Agency, calling the UN resolution a US-led attempt to encroach on the North's sovereignty. The commission, North Korea's most powerful military body, called on U.S. President Barack Obama to apologize for favoring passage of the draft UN resolution and called the move a criminal act by Washington. The statement also highlights the North's generosity in freeing 2 American detainees earlier this month and says that by stirring up the North's human rights issues, the U.S. was being ungrateful. Japan, the European Union, and South Korea were also called out for helping the resolution to pass. But Pyongyang thanked China and Russia for voting against the resolution. The KCNA also reported Sunday that North Korean leader Kim Jong-un guided a joint military drill and called for army units to reinforce their operational command. Kim also called for frequent joint military exercises to bolster the regime's war deterrent capabilities. The leader's actions follow threats made by the North on Thursday when it vowed to strengthen its war deterrence against what it deems hostile powers. Pyongyang withdrew from the Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons in 2003. Ji Myung-gil, Arirang News.
Now, South Korea marked the 4th anniversary of North Korea's attack on its border island of Yeonpyeong-do on Sunday, with memorial services right here in Seoul and also on the island itself. Our Kim Hyun-bin reports.
November 23, 2010, North Korea bombarded South Korea's western border island of Yeonpyeong-do. Over 170 heavy artillery rounds were fired by the North, demolishing buildings, killing 2 civilians, 2 Marines, and wounding 16 others. Hundreds of residents were forced to evacuate. The attack marked the first time North Korea had launched an attack on South Korean territory since the Korean War. To mark the day, a memorial service was held in Seoul with hundreds of distinguished guests, including Defense Minister Han Min-gu, to pay tribute to the fallen. A smaller ceremony hosted by the city of Incheon and the Marines was also held on Yeonpyeong-do.
We have to strengthen our national security so the sacrifices of 4 years ago are not forgotten. We need our citizens to realize how important our security and military readiness is to bring about a peaceful unification.
평화적 통일을 이룩해 나가기 위해서도
4 years have passed since the attack, but local residents still live in fear. The North Korean military has fired hundreds of rounds near the island this year alone.
Every time I hear artillery fire, I'm afraid that it's North Korea attacking again. We can't live normal lives. When North Korea fires off rounds of artillery, we have to go into a bomb shelter. We live in constant fear.
Since the attack, the South Korean military has established a border island command, dispatched an additional 1,200 troops, and deployed dozens of heavy artillery and arms to the island. The South Korean military presence on this island has beefed up significantly, and troops remain on the highest alert for any kind of provocations, something North Korea has to keep in mind should it pull the trigger again. Kim Han-bin, Arirang News, Yeonpyeong-do.
Korea, China and Japan will resume their free trade negotiations in Tokyo on this Monday. Korea's trade ministry says the three countries will focus on negotiation principles for tariff concessions and ways to liberalize the service sector and investments. And the chief negotiators will meet separately away from the working level talks in a bid to try and speed up the process. After recently concluding FTA negotiations with China, Korea plans to more actively push for this trilateral trade pact and also the ASEAN-led regional comprehensive economic partnership. Seoul, Beijing and Tokyo have discussed a wide range of areas from goods, services, intellectual property, even to environment, since launching these negotiations in November 2012, but progress has been pretty slow. Now, with only about 1 week left before the parliamentary deadline to pass next year's budget, Korea's main rival political parties are engaged in a tug-of-war over the government's cigarette price hike and corporate taxes. Speculation is mounting that the National Assembly Speaker will likely attach the contested cigarette price-related bills to the budget, which would allow him to introduce the bills at the plenary session on December 1st, if the parties fail to agree on them by the end of the month. The ruling party says the cigarette bill should be attached to the budget, as the price hike would account for a large part of tax revenue. The opposition side says raising cigarette prices and thereby imposing more taxes on ordinary citizens should be accompanied by a hike on corporate taxes. The opposition party is even looking to boycott parliamentary proceedings. The floor leaders of the two parties plan to talk over the two issues as well as other budget concerns on Tuesday. Now, competition is heating up among three competitors vying to win Korea's project to procure 4 aerial tankers, as the Korean Air Force aims to boost the amount of time its jets can stay up in the air. Our Son Jung-in has more.
As it stands now, Korea's F-15K fighter jets can operate for a maximum of 30 minutes over Korea's easternmost to Dokdo Island and even less over the country's southernmost to Yeodo Island. The military is seeking ways to introduce a refueling aircraft system to extend the jet's operation time and generally strengthen its military capability. Boeing's KC-46, a military derivative of the Boeing 767, is a leading contender in the bidding process. The aerial tanker can carry up to 96 tons of fuel and up to 114 passengers with a cargo capacity of 188 tons. On top of its decent fuel efficiency and cheap operating costs, the aircraft is also fairly compact, which means it's able to land on relatively small airfields.
Really builds on the legacy of the 75 years of experience of the Boeing company with refueling aircraft. It's also interoperable with the U.S. Air Force and all of the coalition forces as well.
The only concern is that its development is expected to be completed in 2017, the same year the Korean Air Force plans to deploy the aerial tankers. Airbus's A330 MRTT, another potential candidate, is already developed and ready to go into operation. The tanker is huge, capable of carrying 260 people, 111 tons of fuel, and 37 tons of cargo, and is still able to conduct a variety of air-to-air refueling missions.
The A330 MRTT is capable of providing more fuel, transporting more passengers and more payload during the same mission, and that is why we have won every single competition outside the US.
Another strong challenger is Israel's IAI. It's offering a tanker based on the second-hand civil aircraft for around half the price of its competitors. Seoul is expected to announce the winner of the Defense Acquisition Program deal worth $1.3 billion early next year. 손정인, Arirang News.
We start before the sun rises to bring you the latest stories out of Korea. We also lead the way with important global coverage. Stay on the pulse of what is happening with Daybreak.
Korea's chronically low birth rate and rapidly aging population is about to bring about a huge historic shift in the ratio of women to men in the country. Our Shin Se-min shows us how things will change in the coming years.
The nation's population is about to undergo a major change in the next year. Women will outnumber men for the first time since 1960. Statistics Korea predicts that the number of women will stand at over 25.31 million by 2015, outnumbering men by 10,000. The agency attributed the change to two major social issues facing the country: the low birth rate and the rapid aging of the population. There are still more boys born in Korea than girls, but given that women have a longer life expectancy than men, their numbers will still be higher overall. But that's not all. The number of people over the age of 65 is also expected to grow rapidly to more than 7.1 million by 2017 from 6.4 million this year. The nation first became an aging society in the year 2000 when just 7% of the population was over 65. But at the current rate, the country could become a super-age society in 2026 when over 20% of its population will be over 65. Given these trends, the labor force will also drop, which is expected to pull down the nation's growth rate. Experts say that to combat the low birth rate and aging population and prevent the economic growth rate from dropping further, the government must utilize the workforce of women, the elderly, and foreigners, and programs and services for these groups must be improved. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
And experts are having their say on what the government needs to do to boost Korea's chronically low birth rate. They are calling for long-term investment in policies aimed at reversing the trend, but they say that building public trust in those measures is the first and most important step. Our Kim Min-ji reports.
There was a time in the not-so-distant past when Korea promoted birth control and encouraged families to have fewer children. In the 1980s, the nation's population topped 40 million, and the government, acting on the fear that overpopulation would take a toll on food and housing supplies, rolled out a one-child campaign. It worked, and now, along with other factors, Korea has one of the lowest birth rates in the world.
Latest figures show Korea's average fertility rate, which represents the number of children a woman is expected to have during her lifetime, is estimated at 1.3. That's the third lowest among 198 countries and well below the world average of 2.5.
Whether it be the high cost of raising a child or more women choosing their careers over motherhood, a growing number of couples are deciding to hold off on having kids. 29-year-old teacher Park Eun-ju says it's why she isn't a mom yet, even though she's been married for 2 years.
If I have a baby, my life will have to be centered around the child. Also, after becoming a mother, I may not be able to get a good enough job, and this will then lower my overall standard of living.
Park and others like her hope the government will offer more incentives like higher family support allowances and tax breaks to encourage women to give birth. However, OECD data shows the Korean government's spending to GDP on such benefits is one of the lowest among member nations. Some experts also say Korea's hyper-competitive society could be another factor keeping the fertility rate down.
If the government gives parents assurances that their children will be able to enjoy a standard level of happiness by getting an average education and landing an average job and working diligently, then the birth rate will naturally go up.
The expert added the government will have to invest more money and time into strengthening its child care and welfare policies to build public trust in the measures before it can expect to see the birth rate improve. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Now, it's been praised heavily, but it's also called obsessive. What is it? Well, it's Korea's fever with education. And to quell the thirst for more and better quality education, Korean education companies are constantly upgrading their materials. For a look at how Korea's education content providers are expanding, or at least trying to expand into the global arena, here's our Kwon So-ah with this week's Industry Insight.
The school bell doesn't signal the end of the day for many Korean students. They are out of their classrooms, but private tutors are waiting for them. And this nearly $30 billion industry has given birth to advanced learning products. And some of them are finding their way overseas. Combine the eagerness of Korean parents to educate their children at the earliest age possible and the craze for English. And it's no wonder that the English education market for young children is booming. Tintin English publishes storybooks for preschoolers in China and Thailand. They say Korea is 10 to 20 years ahead of many other Asian countries when it comes to teaching English as a foreign language. Cheongsang Language School recently signed a contract with major U.S. book distributor IPG, and its products recorded sales of around $20,000 in their first 2 months on Amazon. Experts say assessing the current market volume of overall exports is difficult, but Professor Lee Hyun-chung of Hanyang University estimates it's in the tens of millions of dollars and has doubled in the span of a year.
Korea already has a good image as a very strong education country all over the world. Plus, we have a very strong IT techniques, so IT-based kind of learning package and the teaching package and the content development really attractive to foreign countries. That's combine these two, we can have easily have a second K wave, it's so-called the educational wave, I think.
Cheongdam Learning has adopted IT into its curriculum. Its flagship program, Loud Class, is a tablet PC-based platform created for interactive studying purposes where students' responses can be shared and teachers can lead class through a tablet PC. It also allows teachers to customize their own content.
Hi, Linda. Good to see you.
There's a lot of countries or school districts that have tablets, but they don't know how to use tablets. It's like having a car without an engine. It looks great, but that's the only factor that goes in. So we're creating this engine that helps students, it helps the teachers, it helps the parents.
And the company is sharing this platform with the world. Recently, Cheongdam kicked off a Loud Class pilot program in Thailand.
The world is so small, connected with the ICT. So we think that having more and more experiences from outside that would benefit to our students.
Comparing Thailand and Korea's curriculum from the same grade, the president of IPST says there are some strong topics Thailand does not have yet and should be benchmarking from Korea, especially in terms of math and sciences. This is why industry observers note that in order to go global, it's not all about strong IT-based educational tools. They say Korean firms need to fully understand the level of education in their target market and localize their content to fit that market's needs. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
Time now for a look through the global headlines we're following this Monday morning here in Seoul. For that, we turn to Eunice Kim, standing by at the news center. Good morning, Eunice.
And good morning to you, Mark. We begin with some disheartening news out of the Gaza Strip. A Palestinian farmer was shot dead by Israeli troops near the border area on Sunday. It marks the first fatality since an August truce ended a 50-day war between Israelis and Palestinians there. The Palestinian Health Ministry identified the deceased as 32-year-old Fidel Mohammed Halawa. Gaza's emergency services spokesman said the man appeared to have been killed when a bullet from an army watchtower near the border fence had hit him in the back. The Israeli military only said its forces had fired warning shots at two approaching people before firing toward their lower extremities. One person was hit. Israel has long designated its border area with Gaza an off-limits zone for Palestinians on security concerns. Relatives said the farmer was hunting for songbirds to sell on the market to feed his children. An attack at a volleyball tournament in the Afghanistani village has killed at least 45 people and hurt some 60 others. A spokesman for the governor of Paktika province said a suicide bomber had detonated explosives as people were gathering for the game. A provincial council member said most of the victims were civilians. 8 of the dead were members of the local police. The attack came as lawmakers had approved a measure that would allow American and NATO soldiers to remain after the withdrawal of most foreign troops next month. Volleyball is a popular form of entertainment in rural Afghanistan. During the years of Taliban rule, sports like boxing and soccer had been banned. Finally, Iran has said it will not be able to reach a comprehensive deal on its nuclear program by the Monday deadline. A member of Iran's negotiating team in Vienna told reporters Sunday that it had failed to reach an agreement with world powers, but that extending the negotiations may be possible. The 6 world powers want Tehran to curb its nuclear ambitions in exchange for a lifting of UN sanctions. After beginning the final round of talks on Tuesday, negotiators remain deadlocked on key issues related to Tehran's uranium enrichment capacity and the lifting of those sanctions. Iranian officials had earlier refused to lessen the volume of uranium enrichment, a stance that Western officials say is unacceptable.
And a good Monday morning to you all as we kick things off in baseball. Now on Saturday, the highest bidder for the Kia Tigers' Yang Hyun-jung was revealed to be the Minnesota Twins. But to everyone's surprise, the highest bid was once again a bit too low. Now, despite many experts believing that Yang Hyun-jung will be posted higher than Kim Kwang-yeon's $2 million, turns out it might not be the case. And some speculate that it might be in the $1.5 million range. While the lefty ace and the Kia Tigers were set to announce their decision on Sunday, they postponed their date to the 28th, with some stating that he might opt not to go overseas. Now, golf fans in the nation were getting excited over the CME Group Tour Championship this weekend, which was supposed to be the final showdown between Park In-bi and Stacey Lewis for the Player of the Year honors. But unfortunately for the 2013 LPGA Player of the Year, there is no repeat. Now, despite a decent start in the first round of the tournament, Park In-bi struggles in the second and third round of the event, shooting a 74 and a 73 respectively to finish the third round at 2 over par. And despite another round to go, the #1 ranked Park was mathematically eliminated in the Player of the Year race, with Stacey Lewis set to take this year's top prize. And now shifting over to football, where FC Seoul and Seongnam FC squared off on Sunday for the FA Cup final at the Seoul World Cup Stadium. And despite FC Seoul being the heavy favorites going into this match, both sides were rather evenly matched as the game went scoreless for the first 90 minutes before another 30 minutes of scoreless football in the extra time. And with the FA Cup coming down to penalty shootout, Seongnam goalkeeper Park Jun-hyuk saves 2 shots to help Seongnam with 4-2 on penalties and claim this year's FA Cup trophy. And now finishing things off in Formula One racing, it came down to the final race of the season at the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix as teammates Lewis Hamilton and Nico Rosberg of Mercedes Racing fought for the championship. With Nico Rosberg needing all the advantage he can get, he does get the pole position after winning the qualifying race on Saturday. But a mechanical problem drops Rosberg early in the race as Lewis Hamilton takes advantage and wins his 11th race of the season for his second world title. A great season nonetheless for Nico Rosberg, who finishes second in the 2014 season, with Daniel Ricciardo of Red Bull Racing finishing in third behind the two Mercedes drivers. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great rest of the day and see you guys again for your sports needs.
Well, temperatures have been really generous lately, and even right now, the current temperatures here in Seoul is at about 8, so we won't shiver with cold at all this morning, though we won't get to see the sun today. Rain is in store for the most parts of the nation, and as we can see, rain is falling in some regions and more clouds are coming to the peninsula, but Seoul and the surrounding areas will not get any precipitation. It will just be a cloudy one. The daytime highs will be slightly cooler than yesterday, so let's take a closer look at those temperatures. Temperature in Seoul will top out at 12, while Busan will climb to 16 this afternoon. And as for the other regions, Jeju Island will be getting up to 18, and Daejeon and Dokdo will see a high of 12 and 14. That's all for now. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you very much, Jion. Those are the stories we have for you at this hour. Korea Today is coming up in 30 minutes' time. Goodbye.